What is up, guys? Today I wanted to talk about a new deck in the Scarlet and Violet format. We're going to be breaking down some of these newer decks, kind of going into depth of these new archetypes, because I feel like it's going to be a lot of value to just kind of understand what these archetypes are meant to do, not even including all the rotation cards. And we're going to start with Gardevoir EX. This is one of the more hype cards coming out of the new set. A lot of players have been very high on this card. It has some placements over in Japan, and I think as well in Thailand. I believe it did well in, so I might be mistaken, but I know it had like a finals appearance in Japan and at least a top 4 in one of these other tournaments that has happened. Why is Gardevoir EX good? Well, Gardevoir EX boasts a 310 HP, monstrous 310 HP, with a dark type weakness. A little bit unfortunate that it shares a weakness with Mew VMAX, so cards like Drapion can double up and do a ton of damage. However, it does not get collateraled by Sky Seal Stone, so the Drapion has to be powered up manually to actually do something. It has the ability Psycho Embrace, and you may use this ability as often as you'd like during your turn. You can attach one basic Psychic Energy from one of your discard pile to one of your Psychic-type Pokemon, then place 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. The caveat is that it is a Psychic-type Pokemon, so you can't just power up random things and just start going crazy on the board. But that being said, the 2 damage counters, if it's not that important, you can power up this Gardevoir, for example, for 3 or even 2, and you're just taking 60 damage, putting you at 250, and you swing for 190 with cards like Emergency Jelly to heal you up, or Hyper Potion's gone, I think, or just like regular healing cards like Cook or PCL. You can keep making the deck just a infinite tank. And you have cards like Zacian V, which has, in theory, infinite damage, and there are other Gardevoirs as well that have a lot of damage associated with them. So let's take a look at the shell and how you can build this new archetype, and why I think it is a decent deck to build and invest in. So this is a list that did well over in Japan. Now we're going to go through the whole deck piece by piece, because I think the deck itself is very good as a whole, and its parts are also very strong. So there's the Ralts, which has Teleportation Burst and 70 HP, but you still opt to, you only play this for the 70 HP. I think the Teleportation Burst is irrelevant here, but you choose to play one copy of the Ralts with Memory Skip, which I think you can choose to do this, or the other Ralts, because making your opponent miss an attack or something could be really important at certain phases in the game if your opponent is low on resources or to close out a game. Here is one of the biggest reasons the Gardevoir engine is very strong. It is the Curlia. The Curlia has Refinement, which lets you discard a card from your hand to draw 2 cards once per turn. This is your engine. This is how you're going to draw cards. This is how you're going to set up, and also how you're going to go into your Gardevoirs later in the game. You have one other Curlia with Mirage Step to get 3 Curlias and put them onto your bench. It's not a necessity, but if you can grab this Curlia while having Ralts on your bench as well, if you have, let's say, this Curlia plus the 3 Curlias and 2 Ralts, the other Ralts can get candied up into Gardevoirs, and your Curlia can stay in a position where you can keep drawing cards. So it's very important that maybe if this Mirage Step gets pulled off, you're chilling. You have 3 of the Gardevoir with Shining Arcana. Now, Shining Arcana says once during your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck and attach any number of basic energy cards you find there to your Pokemon any way you like, and put the other cards into your hand. Now, this serves a dual purpose. One, you are accelerating some of the energies out of your deck onto your board so you can recycle them with your Gardevoir into play, because you're playing out of your discard now. That's the most crucial thing. You want to get your energies into the discard as quickly as possible so you can pivot them onto your board however you'd like. Now, if the cards are not energy cards, or you can choose, I guess, to fail it, they will go into your hand. So you just get a free draw 2, not even a discard here with this card. So if you can get 2 Gardevoirs up and running, for example, let's say, you were just getting +4 cards for doing absolutely nothing. Pretty nuts. And then you have Brainwave for 3 colorless, which does 60 plus 30 for each Psychic Energy attached to this Pokemon, which, in theory, again, we can go infinite. Keep in mind that Gardevoir cannot knock itself out with the damage counter ping, so you can only attach 6 energies to this guy, which is 180 damage, plus 60, which is 240 damage. So you can hit for 240 damage out of seemingly nowhere, which is pretty crazy as long as you have the energies in your discard. Now, keep in mind, we are setting up to a stage 2, so it does take some time to get to where we need to be, and that is probably the biggest limiting factor of the deck. Then we have the 2 Gardevoir EX. You only ever really need 1 to be sitting in play, because it's really hard to knock out. Like, it's really, really difficult to just pull up in one shot. I don't think anything in the game that's not Dark type, I will amend that, can do that right now reliably. Rhydon doesn't do enough damage. Mew doesn't do enough damage. Well, Mew can actually, sorry. You need all 4 power tablets because Choice Belt doesn't work. But it's very difficult to knock it out. And you have the 190 damage. You have a copy of Zacian V for the early game to just kind of power up your board, use the Roar of the Sword, and just get an energy out of the deck, which I think is very important to just get a card out of the deck you don't want to draw into. And then you have Storm Slash for the 60 plus 30 for each Psychic Energy attached to this Pokemon. And this one can go a little bit deeper because you have up to 10 attachments to this guy. So Zacian can be your opener or your closer to just win the game at the end of the game with one big Zacian V attack. Yeah. You have a Cresselia as well with Moon Reverse Glow. Move 2 damage counters from each of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So you can use this for a really cheeky knockout somewhere in the game where you can attach 6 energies across the board somewhere. 120 damage, just take that and throw it onto something and clean up a knockout, win the game that way. It circumvents you needing a boss to close out the game. I really like this card. I think it's very cute in the deck and it makes a lot of sense to me, especially with how you put damage counters on your board. Then there's the Celebrations Mew with the Mysterious Tail to help you set up in the early game. You do want to find those VIP passes and the level balls and the ball, like random items early. So having this card really helps out in the turn 1, turn 2 setup. After that, it doesn't really need to be there, but you want to have your early turns be good. Manaphy, I think you don't want to get Rapid Float or other ways to get your bench sniped. I don't really know what else is there right now that snipes bench, but I'm sure there are cards that I'm missing in the forefront of my mind that can snipe the bench pretty easily. So you don't want to give that opportunity away. Obviously, Radiant Greninja in Lost Box is one that's big, so you don't want to have that opportunity available to you. Then there's Radiant Greninja that you have to draw cards as well, and putting Psychic Energies in the discard is something you want to do anyway, so it helps out as a dual factor. There's 11 Psychics, which I think is very strong. You just a lot of energies, a lot of ways to get to them. You never need more than like 9 in a game probably, but you just want to be able to get to them. There's 3 copies of Judge because you're not really relying on using supporters to draw cards. Like, you don't need to research. You oftentimes don't want to research because you don't want to discard these pieces because there's no cards like Ordinary Rod and things like that to bring stuff back. So you just want to keep shuffle drawing and setting your opponent back a little bit, because by turn 2 or turn 3, if your opponent doesn't have an insane board or get like too far ahead, you can play the game because you're a stage 2 setup deck. It takes a little bit of time. You have 1 copy of Serena and 1 copy of Boss to just kind of bring things up. Miriam is really cool for this deck because you can shuffle up to 5 Pokemon into your deck and then draw 3 cards, and draw 3 is a cool effect, and you can shuffle back like your Curlia line or a couple of your Raltses, just keep setting up to bring back the Zacian, maybe the Cresselia, just set up a threat, establish another threat. Yeah. The 1 copy of Clara in case we want to pull something back immediately. I don't know what we really want to pull back immediately, but maybe it's like a Gardevoir or the Zacian to just end the game, potentially. Or maybe even a Manaphy after it gets knocked out against like Lost Box. 4 VIP Pass is really crucial. We want to hit these really early. It's really rough if we don't. But don't worry, don't fret. We've got 4 Level Ball and 3 Fog Crystal, which will also help us search our basic Pokemon out and get our early setup going. The Fog Crystal is really good in the early game, as well as getting our energies. The Level Ball is very, very important to get our Curlia engine running, as it is less than 90 HP. So all of our deck is just pure setup. 3 Rare Candy to get into our Gardevoirs. I don't know if you need 3. I think you could cut it to 2 and maybe play another copy of Fog Crystal or another copy of Ultra Ball just to be able to go deeper. But I think for now, 3 is a safe number to start. I like this list and where it is. So yeah, we'll keep it as is. We have 1 copy of Palpad because we have a lot of one-of supporters. But keep in mind, we are going to be drawing with Curlia more than anything, more than our supporters. So that's why the Mew is very important to get to where we need to be. 2 copies of Emergency Jelly to heal up. Like, for example, this Gardevoir, if we put all the energies onto it, we don't want it to just get, like, pinged and immediately die. So if we can put this all the way down to 20, Emergency Jelly, we heal it up completely. Or we can put all our energies on Zacian, Emergency Jelly, heal it halfway, and we're okay. So I think the biggest reason is to make sure this guy doesn't die here. 1 Sky Seal Stone. So we are still using our Sky Seal Stone to use Zacian V to close out a game, or in the middle of the game, we can just cheat out an extra prize against a VMAX or a V-Star deck, because I think Mew is still probably a really tough matchup, all things considered, even if we don't have Drapion. I guess you could play Drapion. And I think, well, you can't accelerate the Drapion. And I think also like Arceus and Tina might be a little bit tough. So if you can get to those positions where you can cheat an extra prize out against them, you can just accelerate the game at a pace that they don't really expect. I think taking an extra prize is absolutely nuts. You don't have a V-Star in this deck anyway, so Sky Seal Stone is cool. You don't have a way to get there, so maybe you could play like a copy of Raihan or something to find it, because there's actually no way to find it. It can't be found by Mew anymore. Yeah. 1 Temple of Sinnoh. I don't really know why there's a split on Stadium. I like the Collapsed to be able to heal something, just pop it off the board, and make your opponent's life a little bit difficult, but I don't really know why Sinnoh is in here compared to something else. Maybe just to make Lugia work a little bit harder, I think is probably the best way to put this in here. But this is the first skeleton when you're looking at Gardevoir, and we're going to look at a different Gardevoir list and a couple of the cards that are in here that could also be really cool. We're going to talk about the Gallade here that has Buddy Catch. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for a supporter, put it in your hand. I like this card a lot because I think this can just smooth out your engine. So if you want to judge a certain turn, you can judge. If you need to Clara a certain turn, you can find that Clara. If you need to Roxanne, you'll find that Roxanne. I really like this card a lot, especially with all the weird one-off supporters you can play in this deck. So I'm a fan of the Gallade. I think you should be an inclusion in the deck. Roxanne is also really cool because you're probably going to fall very far behind. So I like having that. I don't really know if you need Worker. Draw 3, discard a Stadium. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I wouldn't play that. Arven seems really cool as well to get an item and a tool. So you can kind of close out the game with the Sky Seal Stone at some point towards the end of the game. and grab like a candy or something. Jelly also is another card you can grab. Thornton is really cool as well because you can just make something on your board into a Zacian and just start swinging. Zacian coming back is really cool. I think Zacians are early, mid, late game attacker sometimes, but you don't want to have two because it's not the greatest thing to open, in my opinion. Agatha is also really cool because it's like a plus power for 3. So you can just power up your active, do a ton of damage, and then move the damage counter with Agatha and accelerate another energy or something to your Gardevoir or Zacian or whatever. So now you're getting an extra 30 damage, and then you're getting an extra energy, or 2 even, to attach to your board. This one is also consistent down the board. 2 rare candy. It has a Hisuian Heavy Ball, which I'd like because you are playing a lot of weird one-offs that I would like to pull out of the prizes. And then a Choice Belt for extra damage. But keep in mind that EX Pokemon are not affected by Choice Belt. So it is a little bit worse in this format because if EX Pokemon and like Lost Box and stuff like that continue to be good, Choice Belt becomes a lot worse. So this is your early Gardevoir breakdown. I don't know how you guys are going to choose to build the deck. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I think Psycho Embrace is a really cool ability and a really good way to work around it. I don't know if we have enough good Psychic attackers to make the deck crazy good right away, but I think there's a lot of potential. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of deck breakdown. Let me know in the comments below if this is something that interests you guys. I can do more in the future of just a quick deck breakdown, how these decks operate, and what they're supposed to do. Just like a quick primer. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.